Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am here with Ryan Innes.
Yes, sir.
And dude, it's a pleasure to be here with you, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
The last time I saw you, you helped us. We had a gala for the Operation Underground Railroad in December, and you were our special musical guest, and you just killed it.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was funny because we were trying to get just somebody random all of a sudden, and you heard about the cause and just jumped at the opportunity, and it was like blew it up for us, and so it was really a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, I think I heard about it from David Osmond.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't able to do it and reached out to me and said, hey man, you're first on my list for these guys, I can't be there. And so it ended up being just kind of, something that happened, but then once I was there, I was like, oh man, I'm so glad.
Yeah, no, we appreciated having you there. And the first time I heard about you, you won a contest. My friend Sean Bingham used to own a company called Tumult. It's now Gig.
Yeah.
And you won the contest the first year that I was paying attention to it and got to perform in front of 60,000 people at Stadium of Fire.
Yeah, it was 60,000 people, and we were basically opening for the Beach Boys.
That's so
bucket
good.
list, right?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing, yeah. And
what was that experience like performing in front of such a big crowd? Put us in those shoes.
It was the first time, for one, so we just had no idea what to expect, and I had a full crew, full band, like 2 horn players and 2 background singers and drums and bass and guitar. So we were a big crew, and we came out and did a cover of a Bruno Mars tune at the time, and then did an original. And we just did 2 songs, and we kind of like melded them into this medley. And man, we just sang our faces off, and I kind of didn't open my eyes the whole time, and because the stage seemed so small compared to the wave of faces. So man, it turned out really well, and we ended up taking home the $10,000 prize, and basically got to pay off my band for all the free stuff they'd done before. That was fantastic.
Oh, that's great. Well, you've had a couple big things happen to you, that obviously being one of them. I think you're most well known, you were on season 4 of The Voice.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, when you were on The Voice, one of the judges was Shakira. And Shakira is my celebrity crush.
Yes, she
is. So she's such a beautiful woman. And it goes back to when I was living in Mexico for 2 years as an LDS missionary. Okay. We would be walking through the streets, and sometimes you just get a little homesick, or you're just kind of wanting some American music, and you don't really hear. They blasted Whitney Houston and Shakira were like the two. I didn't know who Shakira was at the time. This is 2001, 2002. Okay. But all of a sudden you'd hear this angelic voice come on, and so ever since she's kind of been like my celebrity crush. But
yeah, she should be.
Yeah.
She was just as beautiful back then as she was on the show. Like she was pregnant at the time and we had kind of work around her schedule. And it ended up being something that, like, it was just, we have Shakira here? Like, really? She's like otherworldly. Like, how did we get this goddess to come down to The Voice for us?
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, she was my little kid crush, or not little kid, I guess I was 20 at the time or whatever. But what about you? Who was your inspiration for you growing up in music? Did you have somebody that inspired you?
Yeah, the biggest inspiration that I had growing up was Boyz II Men. And I just had never heard singing like that. I'd never understood how you could have 4-part harmonies like that. I grew up in a little tiny town where it was just a lot of country, and then all of a sudden Boyz II Men, someone gave me one for Christmas, and I just kind of lost it. And so ever since then, they've been one of the biggest inspirations for me.
That's a cool story.
Yeah.
So Boyz II Men, I remember when I was little, they were the first ones to do really cool music videos. They'd be like in the white sandy beaches and everything. I just remember that.
The water runs dry. That video. That thing it's still iconic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so at what point in your life did you kind of discover, because growing up, I think I read your mom actually, and maybe you can tell the story, but you wanted to play football, but your mom wanted you to play the piano, and she basically forced you if you wanted to play football.
Yeah. She set a hard line. So I grew up in a very musical family on my mom's side. We all grew up playing the piano from a young age. She's a piano teacher. And it got to my junior high school kind of time of my life, and she wasn't going to let me quit. But she also encouraged me to play sports and just kind of round things out. But then the hard line came in. Well, I love that you want to play sports, but you can't play football, which was my favorite thing at the time. You can't play football unless you play the piano. It was that hard. And I'm the oldest, so they were very strict with it. And it came down to Thursday nights before the game, and I hadn't practiced that week. And my dad would just be like, okay, you've got 2 hours to make up before your game tomorrow. If you don't, then I'm going to call your coach and let him know that his starting fullback won't be playing because he didn't practice his piano. So there was no way a 17-year-old kid was going to actually let that happen, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it worked.
So at the time, did you want to play piano, or you just got busy, or you were just doing football, or you're just a typical 17-year-old and you're like, instruments are cool, but I want to, I want to play sports.
Up to that point, I'd played so long that piano became fun. When you didn't have to practice so much to actually play through something. And then I knew that I could play anything I wanted. I just had to practice long enough. So I was kind of hesitant, like, Mom, I know I can do this, but why do I have to keep playing, keep practicing? But luckily, because of that timeline where I was, forced to play, basically, is where I kind of learned how to write. I started messing around with music, and I started being able to figure out how to maybe create my own stuff, and that's what was more intriguing to me than learning how to play the next Mozart song. So,
well, I've listened to a couple of musicians as they write music, and it's so fascinating. They have such a good ear for the different sounds. To me, I wouldn't even know where to start with something like that. And so, is that something you pick up just by spending so many hours doing it, that eventually you just get that ear for each key and each piece?
Absolutely. And the style that I was trained in is called Suzuki.
Okay.
And they're very heavy on ear training. They would basically make you listen to the songs as part of your practicing, so that they become ingrained in your brain. And so I think I was even better at listening than I was reading music. I would memorize pretty quick and listen. And so, I think that also was a portion of why I ended up going into composition and songwriting, because I started with a really good ear training.
Gotcha. Well, even after that, I mean, you went to college, you were going to pre-med, and you, we talked about this a little bit before, but you kind of thought that was going to be the route you were going to go. You were engaged, and all of a sudden your whole life started to change. Tell us a little bit about your engagement and kind of how that went.
So coming home from my mission in 2002, I had already attended a year of college before, and I was going to do pre-med, and I eventually graduated with an associate's degree with pre-med. And when I got home, I ended up getting engaged pretty quick to a girl that I'd been talking to before. And when I left college, she and I were engaged, and then all of a sudden, 3 weeks before we got married, we broke it off.
Wow.
And so that was kind of a crazy time in my life.
Invitations were out,
The invitations were supposed to go out the next day.
Okay.
And, it was my first love. It was the first time I'd ever felt those butterflies. And so it was really, really hard. And at the time, I'd moved over to Phoenix to work for the University of Phoenix as a recruiter, basically. And I had all these things, like music was on the back burner. I wasn't really thinking about it. My engagement had just broken completely off, twice actually. And then I didn't think I was actually going to be able to go into medical school because I didn't like it. I didn't like science. And so I eventually decided, you know what, I'm going to give music a try. I had a buddy that had come up to BYU. I had another buddy that was doing it in another school. And I just said, you know what, I got to give this a shot. Everything else is breaking down. I'm just doing what I want to do right now. So I applied to BYU, did all the entrance exams and things, and somehow I got in. Honestly, I hadn't even prepared for it. And ever since then, I've been doing music.
So did you go into a music degree at BYU?
Yeah, I studied what was at the time called Media Music Studies, and it's a 4-year degree. I had to go through all the courses of theory and composition, and it was pretty intense.
Well, that was a pretty cool time at BYU for the music scene, because that's when Neon Trees, Imagine Dragons, Lindsey Sterling, there was quite a few musicians that had really blown up that you guys were all performing at Valora at the same time.
Yeah, I met all of them, and they were, that was just Tyler, and that was just Lindsey, and so on. And so it just, I was also singing with vocal point while I was in school, and I learned to kind of hone my vocal chops as a soloist. And then when I got out, I had to learn how to play the piano and sing at the same time when I was in school. I hadn't done that yet.
So you had never been singing when you were younger?
I've been singing a ton. No, I've been singing since I was like 5 years old, but I'd never played the piano and sung at the same time.
I got you.
That was something I had to figure out how to do in college. And that was a whole other experience too. And I wasn't even doing it at vocal point. So from 2008, when I graduated and had vocal point, whatever, then I started to learn how to kind of be an artist, like write my own songs and play them and sing them and play them. So there was still a lot of growth happening just maybe 10 years ago.
Wow. And so how did you get that first break where you were like, okay, I can actually do this for a living? Because even graduate, I think you talked about you had a lot of fear around being able to pay your crew and things like that.
Yeah. Well, when I graduated, I was working at Red Robin at the time.
Okay.
And I hated it. But I didn't know what else to do because all I had was a music degree. There wasn't any kind of internship that I got into. There wasn't any entrance into something else when you have that kind of degree. It's very much an entrepreneurial thing. And I didn't take any business classes. I had no idea what the music business was like. I just knew how to sing. And so the first thing I did was just I just started playing as many gigs as I could. And velour was part of that puzzle. And Corey Fox heard me play at one of the open mics, and he pushed me afterwards and said, hey, you should hook up with this guy. So it was a whole networking thing happened after that. And I continued to play whatever gigs I could get. I continued to try and hone the craft, and eventually, it led into some stuff that happened later.
So did you go on the road for a lot of those gigs? Because I've interviewed a couple of stand-up comedians, and I used to do that. I did it for a couple of years.
Oh, you did?
And, yeah, and I never wanted to do the road thing because you have to put in so much of a grind to get to before you are an overnight success, right?
Yeah, it takes
years,
yeah.
Exactly. So were you on the road doing those shows?
Man, I'd like to say that I had that history, and that I could hold that badge of honor up and be like, oh my gosh, I was on the road for years. I didn't do that.
Okay.
I have yet to actually do that. I was playing enough gigs around here locally and still having to work at Red Robin. I didn't have the time or the money. And then when I was just about hitting my stride with some stuff is when the voice happened.
And tell us, how did that all come about?
So I've been attending a songwriters expo that they do twice a year, one in California, one in Denver. And there was a woman there that heard me sing the very first time I had attended. And you do a showcase, and I sang one of my original songs. She came up and approached me. We started talking back and forth. And it wasn't until maybe 4 years later that she got an email from the casting agency that The Voice uses. And that email said, anyone that you refer gets a private audition.
Mm.
And up to this point, I'd already tried out for The Voice 2 prior times.
Here in Utah?
Both in LA.
Oh wow, and both times you did not.
Both times I didn't get through. So the third time I auditioned, which was season 4, it was a private audition. I didn't have to go wait in the line. I didn't have to do any of that. And so I was much more willing to do it because I was a little bit over it at that point.
Sure.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
And I'd had enough kind of success and feeling like, I don't need The Voice. So I showed up, I think, in a better spirit. I showed up in a better energy because I was just like, I'm just going to be who I am. If you don't like it, that's cool. I had stuff to do already. I'm just here. So The Voice then became this thing that we turned into, the beginning of, I guess, the bigger portion of my career, which is coming about here real soon.
Yeah. Well, and so once you tried out, was there another tryout or process, or how did you find out that you were actually on the show?
So there's every season's different. My experience with it, I had the first initial audition. After that, they make you go do an interview and talk to you and see if you have anything that's worthy of like a story. Mm-hmm. I think I told them something like, you can edit this out. I told them I was a virgin. I'm a 37-year-old virgin. I'm a unicorn in LA. Like, you guys got to put me on the show. They ended up not talking about any of that. So I got a call back after that. And they said, you know what, we want you to come back. It was like 2 or 3 weeks later. Mm. And at that time, you didn't know if they were going to give you that call back. You were just waiting. So I got the call back, and then you go out and they have a song prepared for you. You're staying at a hotel with a bunch of other people. And I had to go through one more audition before I got onto the blinds, which was aired. Mm-hmm. And so before I actually got on the show, there was 3 auditions.
Okay. And how did you decide what song you were going to sing, both in those auditions and then once you actually had your first live performance?
So when I auditioned the very first time, you come in with whatever you want. And I think I sang like Trouble from Ray Montaigne, so a Beatles tune, and maybe Gravity, the one that I actually ended up singing. Song, right? No, it's John Mayer.
Oh, sorry, John Mayer.
Yeah. And so they... that you just get to pick what you want on that first audition. The second audition, they call it the executive audition. All the executive producers are there. The band is there. Wardrobe and makeup are there. Everybody that's involved with the show is there. And I think they all kind of have a say because they're looking at you as this, character.
Yeah, they want to make a star.
They know you can sing. Like, that's why they got to that part. But they want to see, okay, how does he dress? Mm-hmm. How does he carry himself? How does he talk? What's his story? How does he talk back? How does he interact with us? There were so many pieces of the puzzle about the show that were beyond singing. So they were just casting people at that point, and I got through that audition, and then at any point while you're in the hotel, through all of these processes, they could kick you off.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could be gone at any time for whatever.
And then you kick certain people.
Oh yeah,
off,
people that you knew were amazing, they would get kicked off for weird crap that was on their social media in the past. We ended up having to take a 500 question test. The same test that they give FBI and CIA agents to find out what's going on. And they were the weirdest questions, like, do you enjoy the work of a ranger, like a forest ranger? Do you hear voices? Do you ever talk back to, like, really weird questions? And honestly, they're designed so much so that if you answer trying to not look crazy, is how I know you're crazy.
No,
yeah, they'll be looked over by a psychiatrist. We had to go talk with them. They actually knew that I was from a religious family just by that test. So there were so many pieces of this puzzle coming together, and then
they're like calling all of your friends for references.
Dude, yeah. I mean, they even tried to get a hold of my ex-fiance.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did they end up getting a hold of her?
They did. Yeah, they went through like her sister. They had got her sister's number, and her sister gave it back to them anyway. So they tried to get pictures of us. They tried to get like even our announcement. They were trying to play up that story of this like heartbroken, you know, post engagement, and now like 30-something years old, and this is his last chance, and he's been heartbroken, and he's not going to be a doctor anymore. So now he's in his musician. This is his last chance. They were really trying to play it up, and so yeah, we got into the whole thing, and then it comes down to, okay, you guys are going to audition for the blinds, and this was one of the weirdest parts of the whole thing. So we've been in this hotel for however long. We've been hanging out with each other, and when they took us into the blind audition time, there's going to be 4 days of auditions, and they would tell you the day before which day you're going to audition. And when you left, everyone had all of their devices taken from them. My phone, my tablet, my computer, I had to turn them into them. And then the reason was because when you auditioned, you left the hotel with your bags. And if you didn't make it on, they would just send you home.
Send you right to the airport.
Yeah, you would never, yeah, honestly, you were just like out the door and gone. They weren't going to put you up. Or if you made it, if you got onto a team, they would send you to a whole other hotel. A holding hotel.
Okay, so you had to have all your stuff with either way.
Yeah, you had to have stuff either way. And then so I auditioned the very first day. And for the next 3 days, I was in another hotel with no phone, no computer, no contact at all, because they didn't want anyone talking about what was happening. So yeah, it was this pretty gnarly kind of experience to have all of that. Just they really play up the drama,
yeah,
and not necessarily on purpose. Like they're covering their.
Well, it's not. It's probably good for them to be able to see who can handle the spotlight of being a star later on in some of those things as well.
I think so, yeah. And I think again that test would come back to let them know if you were going to be like a good candidate for, they had people that literally would try and jump out of the van on the way back from being cut.
Wow. Just because they were so
depressed about it, and others that would like really have hard times with other contestants. Anyway, there's so many emotions and things going on. I think they were just covering their asses.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, I mean, that's the biggest thing that's ever happened to them, and it might be the biggest thing that ever happens to them. And so much is on the line, right?
Yeah, and that's how they're viewing. Like, this is my one shot.
Yeah.
This is the only time I'm gonna have a chance to either be the next Shakira or working over at Starbucks. Like, so people took it very serious. And granted, I understand that, but I was a little older at the time. I had my experience with the industry, and I was a little bit in a better space. And so,
yeah,
I think that's why it worked, to be honest.
Yeah, because you weren't. Well, it's like in sales. So whenever I'm selling real estate, people say, one of the things that my competition will try to say is, well, Jimmy will be too busy for you. He does all these other things. He's, sells 200 homes a year. He doesn't have time for his clients. And that's kind of the one thing they can say is,
sure, busy.
You ain't gonna have enough time. Yeah. But what I try to explain to them is, well, a lot of these agents, the biggest advantage of me having, I think currently have 38 deals under contract or something like that, and the biggest advantage that gives me is I don't care if your home sells or not. If I'm going to do what's really best for you, as far as like I'm not trying to push you into a home or take an offer you don't want to accept, because I don't need your deal to close to pay my mortgage or put food on the counter.
Yeah.
So I can always have my client's best interest in mind, and that's one of the best feedbacks I always get is I can tell Jimmy really had my interest in mind. It's kind of the same thing. It's when you're not coming, I call it commission breath, right?
Oh,
if an agent or a sales guy in general needs the sell or needs that audition, they just don't have the same energy as somebody that has nothing to lose. It's like if you're playing dodgeball and there's the guy that doesn't care and he's just going wild throwing balls. He's probably going to win before the kid that's trying not to get hit by.
Man, I think it's a good lesson in any line of work or life, just being unattached from that outcome. Even if you're in a space where you really, really need it, but you can stay in that space of like, if this doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world. I'll just stay true.
Yeah.
And I think that was the space that I was in that you just described. So
that's great.
Yeah, man, I was just like, hey, let's see what happens. And it worked.
So then you got your big audition that was filmed that you knew was going to be aired. How did you decide which song to sing at that point?
So at that point, they'd actually kind of had talked to you, and you put in your requests and submissions, and they looked at what you had done before, and then they would tell you what your audition song was. And I just happened to luck out with "Gravity" by John Mayer. And every one of the other contestants were kind of jealous. They're like, "Oh my gosh, that's an amazing, perfect song. Like, how did you get that?" And I was like, "They just designed it to me. I said I wanted it, you know." And there was other people that were assigned like really kind of weird songs and like weird arrangements of them, and it was just it seemed like they were trying too hard, or they were wanting to give that person like a hard moment and maybe have something. You know, it's TV. They wanted to see something happen.
Sure.
So
Well, if you get a harder song to stick, it really creates something. But then it also makes good TV drama if
True.
they kind of botch it, I guess.
And the thing is, like, they would never say that they were the ones that chose the song for you. The coaches would talk about the fact, why did you choose that song? And they'd be like, I didn't. But they would never air that.
I gotcha.
They would never.
I always thought that the person for sure chose their song, so that's interesting to hear.
Yeah. And there's even some more scenarios down the road with, like, in the third round, they tell everybody specifically, the artist finally gets to choose their song, and you're going to see what they're doing. But they made you choose from a pre-approved list of about 200 songs, and it was everyone choosing from the same list. So there were multiple people choosing the same songs, and you couldn't get that one. So you had to choose your top 4, and then they would choose from your 4. So that's what happened to me. Is I got like my last choice was the one that they picked.
On the song that you finally...
When I finally got kicked off, yeah.
Well, let's go back to your first song, because that went very well. Immediately, 2 of the chairs flipped around. Usher flipped around right away, and then I think Shakira and...
The first one was actually Adam.
Yes, so he flipped around quick. Like
yeah, it was like right when I like did this first run and sang the first Gravity. The second one was Blake Shelton on the second Gravity. And then Usher and Shakira about the same time, more towards the middle, big notes.
What was that experience like when you knew that you...
When I was on the
passed,
show?
Yeah.
Well, at that point, you really just need one person. Because if they turn around, then you're on their team and you're on the show. It doesn't matter. And I was just hoping for that, and I had zero expectation. Again, I felt like in this situation I was unattached. I didn't care what was going to happen. I was just going to go sing. And when Adam turned around, like the very first thing, I was like, what? But I knew I had the rest of the song to get through, you know, like. So I was in my head about that, and then when Blake turned around, I was like, you gotta be like. So I closed my eyes, and I do that a lot, but I really was like, I can't. I'm not gonna get it. I'm just gonna sing the song. Yeah. And then when the big stuff happened, you know what's really interesting? This is something that they didn't show. I cracked. I tried to go for this big note that you hear in the recording. I cracked really bad, but the way that they edited it on TV, you don't hear it.
So by that point, they'd already turned and showed.
Yeah, I was already on the show, but when I cracked is when Usher and Shakira had turned around. It was like they were turning around, and then I cracked. And when they edited the show, they cut to my family like freaking out, and they cut to these other things to distract from that. And it's still one of these things to this day. I'm like, yeah, I got a 4-chair turn, but I didn't have my best showing, and in fact, they even like helped me to look better than I had done. And
well, that's kind of generous of them to do.
It was.
They were all turning. You just had a moment right as they were turning at the end, the last 2.
Yeah, yeah. And up to the point, it had gone well. And you know, coming back to like being a TV show, I think they were setting me up to do well. They had given me some good airtime. They had put me at the last in an episode, and at the last of all the blind auditions.
Right.
I felt like they were favoring me in some ways, for whatever reason.
And so the episode when you lost, just the song didn't really.
So yeah, it was a Gavin DeGraw song, "I Don't Want to Be," and it was just a little bit out of my range, and it was just a little too rock for my voice. And I picked the song as like my last of the 4. Remember I explained that, and I knew that they could have picked it, but I thought, no, these other ones are so good. I'll just throw this one in. I didn't really count on it being the one. Well, they ended up choosing it, and when I performed it that night, I got a little rattled on some of it because it wasn't as, you know, suited for me, and I didn't have my best 90 seconds. And then ultimately, Usher chose this other girl who had like her best 90 seconds.
Right.
Like she did amazing, and it was better than she had done up to that point. And she's a beautiful girl, and you know, all things combined, including TV. I think, you know, the way that they had favored me up to that point a little bit, and then to see me fall was somewhat of drama.
Sure, there was some drama within it.
But the thing that they chose to include on that final episode was Adam coming over to Usher and saying, "Oh man, like she won the round, but I would have stuck with Ryan for the long haul." And they chose to keep it in the episode. They could have easily just cut that off, especially since it was like unscripted and off camera, basically. So, man, it was kind of a ride.
So after that was over, was there some immediate bump in business or things that came your way? What happened after that?
So I had multiple people reach out to me from labels. I had managers, and I sold a crap ton of t-shirts, which I had already kind of set up and had things going. Like everything was just, riding high at the time. And so I ended up flying out to New York and meeting with a manager and with a couple labels, and I ended up working with one of those managers for about 6 months. The label thing never happened, but I'm still in contact with people there that have been working on this project that I'm doing now. So eventually that all turned into now having my manager I've been with now for 3 years. And
well, you have some exciting news because as we talked about in the intro here, but you just released your debut album, The In Between.
The In Between, yep.
And is there a song that you love on that? We'll talk about the album quite a bit here, but is there a specific song that maybe the average listener wouldn't really understand it as one of your favorites, but maybe there's a story behind why it is?
Oh, good question. Well, this record is very different than what people expected. It's not me at a piano singing some kind of super soul ballad song. There's a lot of different kind of experimental and boundary pushing production. But the biggest song I think that had kind of a cool story was, how do you pick the baby of your?
Was there any particular song that maybe there's a story behind it or some kind of inspiration for it that would be a cool way for the audience to connect to the song better? Because you've talked about that one of the things that I read in one of your quotes as I was getting ready for the interview was that you really use music to express all of yourself, your happiness, your sadness, your glee, everything about it, right? Can you really feel that in the music and in...
Yeah. So I didn't write as many love songs this time. It was kind of something I just didn't feel like I wanted to go into. So one of the songs I wrote, it was a different kind of love song. It was called I Need a Lover. Mm-hmm. It was the first single off the record. It's been out for a little bit. And this one it seems obvious by the title. I need a lover. And most people take it as, he's just lonely and he wants someone, right? Well, and that's how it started. I was playing a gig down in Provo and I had finished up and all my bandmates were going home with someone and I was all by myself. And as I was driving home, I was like, man, I need someone. I just want someone like that. We all feel that, right? Mm-hmm. And I got home that night and I ended up writing the whole chorus. I need a lover, not another. And it turned into this kind of other thing. And as I finished the song up a couple years later, it turned into more being about, I need the person that I'm currently with. And when I finished the song, I wasn't with anyone. I need this song to be about showing up in the relationship as my lover rather than, and I said this in the song, like my mother. Oh. And it rhymes really well, but the idea was I don't need a woman in my life coming up and just telling me what to do.
Take care of me.
And tell me when I'm wrong and bad. And I don't need someone coming in. No guy wants that, right? No. And so it was more about like whoever I'm with at the time, they just need to show up like this, rather than needing just some whoever. It was more personal about. So the story kind of.
Well, I love that. Did that evolve? Because you're in a very healthy relationship now. You've been with her for quite a while.
Yeah.
Was that part of the inspiration for that changing and molding as you were writing it, or did that just kind of happen as you?
I finished it and had all that done before I ever met her.
Okay.
And the thing about it was, it actually was kind of self-fulfilling. This relationship I'm in now has been learning how to show up in those things rather than putting your stuff on them. And I need you to be this for me. Mm-hmm. So I need you to show up as someone that's willing to work this out, as a true lover. And so
how do you manage that, both being a musician and then being in a relationship? Is there a lot of difficulty because you obviously have an interesting schedule? You work a lot at night. You have to spend your time by yourself writing and on the road and those different things. How do you manage both being a musician and then having that relationship?
Oh, good question. Well, one, it's part of it is because of who she is. My handling it is dependent upon if she's handling it. And the thing that's great about her is that she's an independent woman. She, doesn't necessarily need me to be there all the time for her to be happy. And she has her own career. She has her own things that she's doing. And so we do have very opposite schedules. I'm nights and weekends, and she's morning and weekdays. So one of the cool things about it is that when we do have time together, it's precious. Yeah. It's sacred, right? We're there. We're current with each other, and we make sure that we communicate really well, and when we're checking in with each other, and that we're just still doing all the little things, right? Yeah. Little love notes here, and like making the bed or something, like eating the little stuff.
Well, I love that entire song. Like you said, I need a lover, and just the idea of showing up the way that person needs you to be there for them. Because I think too often people get in a relationship and either don't know how, or they don't necessarily, they don't do it on purpose, but they don't show up the way that person needs them to.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I've had to learn, like, for example, masculine energy likes to be challenged, feminine energy likes to be supported. And so a lot of times in my life, I'm a challenger by my nature. Yep. I challenge people, and I've had to learn to be that more empathetic supporter in relationships. Yeah. And show up a different way, which isn't natural for me necessarily.
Interesting.
And Tony Robbins talks about it at his Date with Destiny seminar. I think he talks about it on his Netflix special. 80% of a relationship is already determined how you guys will connect based upon how your natural behaviors are. So where she's independent, you found a good match that works really well for you, which is really cool, because I think too often people try to force maybe these fits that literally only 20% of it they can fix. You're wired a certain way, so to find that person, spend that extra time doing that. Yeah. I think it's the same way with almost like a career. You can put all the extra effort into the wrong career, and eventually it can work. But to be really happy in what you're doing, same thing you did with music, right? Yeah. You had to spend that extra, really put yourself out there a little bit. I mean, the road that was logical was probably to go to med school and do the
super safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but there was no happiness for you.
No, I wasn't enjoying it, and this security of it would be the misery of it for me, because it wouldn't have challenged me. I wouldn't have been doing, what I was actually good at and what I, could grow in. Yeah. Once you're a doctor, that's just what you do for the next 30 years, right?
No, I wanted to go into a couple different careers before I finally settled on real estate. It was funny because I thought I wanted to go into those careers, but I need a little chaos. I need a lot of moving pieces in my life in order to be happy. And so, anyway, well, back to the album. What are some of the difficulties, or was it maybe easier than you expected or much harder than you expected to put together a full album and get that released?
It was harder than I expected, but I don't know that I should have had any other expectation. It's my first record. I'm doing it all by myself. It's fully funded by myself, and I was working basically with me and another producer and a couple of the writers on the song. So there's a lot of logistics beyond making the music that I had no idea, and I've had help with, but it was still a lot. And yeah, I learned a ton. Like, I feel like now, it's like when you do anything hard, you're like, oh man, if I could go back, I would do it way better, way cheaper, and a lot less stress, but there's no way I could have. So for me, it was time to make a record rather than doing the singles like a lot of people do now. I wanted to make a record. I wanted to go through the process and the journey, and I wanted to have the end moment, the final chapter, where I learned so much from this on more than just the musical level. There was a lot of life lessons learned too. So, man, it was harder than I thought, but can I really say that I regret that? No.
No, of course not. No. Well, now you have the album coming out. What does the marketing or the tour of it look like? How much do you have to, you're doing a lot of different interviews, marketing, things like that. What's the main ways that you go about sharing the album? Like, obviously I want my audience to go download it, buy it, listen to it.
Yeah, go check it out.
And we'll attach links to it at the end of the podcast on the show notes as well.
Very cool, appreciate that.
What do you do now as a in marketing to get the album out there?
Well, there's a couple ways that you can get some really good exposure. The first way that I hope will end up happening is getting licensing deals. They call them sync deals for short. Basically, it's getting your songs on TV shows or movies, films, commercials, whatever kind of visual medium needs music, and there's a licensing fee that goes with that. One, so money. Two, you get some really cool exposure. I've had buddies that have broken their entire careers because they got a placement on Grey's Anatomy. So, and you never know where that could actually happen. Your song might just be the perfect fit for the trailer that's coming up for that next huge movie, and all of a sudden they're like, who is this guy? We had no idea. You know, the 10 years to become an overnight success can happen in one placement. And I have a sync agent that's working on that for me, so that's one piece of the puzzle. Second piece of the puzzle is I have a PR company that I've hired. I mean, that's just good business, right? You have people doing what they do well to help you in the thing that you did well. So they're helping me, and we're trying to get in with all the bloggers and the influencers, and we're trying to get on any kind of you know, once the record comes out, we can get a booking agent to really get us in front of some better crowds, not better crowds, but bigger crowds.
Sure, big audience.
Yeah, I love the local, you know, intimate scene, but eventually we need to get in front of more people, and that's going to take a, you know, opening for so and so that has a bigger audience that allow us to be in front of. I don't know that I'm going to hit the road for 2 or 3 months at this point and just kind of, you know, go on that grind. I don't know that that's the smartest thing for me at this point.
Is it an option for somebody like in your situation to try to find a band to open for? Is that something that you
yeah for, you know,
actively try to do?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to get on. Like you can pay.
Oh, okay.
Be like, we'll pay $10,000 to be on your summer tour. You know, Maroon 5, but it would be more like probably 100,000 at that point with those. But yeah, there's definitely ways to get in front of more crowds, like either one paying it or two being friends with bands that are doing cool stuff. Like Fictionist is a band locally that got on.
You've written some work with. Oh, sorry, continue. But you've written with like Neon Trees and a few others.
Yeah, Tyler's a good friend of mine, and we wrote some stuff that didn't make it on the record. And then Stu from Fictionist wrote with him, McKay Stevens and Nate Pfeiffer. Nate actually produced it. And then Timothy Bloom was a guy that had done some stuff with Neo and Chris Brown. And then another guy named Michael Pollock, who actually just wrote Kelly Clarkson's biggest single, new big single. So yeah, I have contacts in that world, but if you're gonna get in with if you're gonna get in front of a big audience and being on a big tour, you need to have a booking agent that is hustling that for you and can get those, or you need a label who's working with booking agents. But the thing is, they both want to know if you have the other, and they won't get on board unless you have the other. So you need to get in with the booking agent, and they're gonna ask, well, who's your label? Because they want to know that you have that support. Labels gonna be like, well, who's your booking agent? So they don't have to worry about that. So this album specifically is the biggest piece for me to try and find probably a booking agent first.
Got it.
And then from there we can start to put all the other pieces together. So yeah, the marketing is the record itself. I think the best marketing is good music.
Yeah, I mean, you have a product now that people listen to it, they go out and they say, okay, we want this guy. Essentially, that's how you get.
Yeah, you know. And I haven't had that up to this point. It's just been the voice, which in a lot of ways has a stereotype attached to it and a bias.
Well, yeah, because I mean, one thing about the voice that's interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they haven't really had any huge stars come out of that yet. Not like American Idol has, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So like where you say there might be a little bit of a stigma. Well, and so what's your favorite part of performing in a concert? Is it beforehand? Is it when you're backstage? Is it being in front of the audience? Because it's such a thrill. Like it's something that I think every kid wishes they had the opportunity. I would have loved to be a rock star in another life, right? But just to be in front of those giant crowds and you know you got your music, you know they're gonna love it, you know how to perform it. Take us there.
My favorite moments with music is definitely on stage with the band and with the audience. And you know, it's like anything with sports or business. You're not always going to have the moment. The magic's not always there. So there's some sets that you're just trying to get through as best you can. You're performing it well and it sounds good, but it doesn't feel like it may other times. So the moments that I cherish and that I look forward to are when that magic somehow just happens on stage with you and the band and the song. Typically the audience is probably just right there with you energetically and either singing along or just following everything you're doing. And there's these moments that just happen, and I've talked to musicians before, and you don't know when they're going to come, and you don't know why it happened because you played that song 50 times, but this one time it somehow was just magical. I don't know a better word. Those are my favorite moments, and I look forward to whenever those are going to come along. And you practice, and you try and put your whole heart into it, and you do everything you can to try and recreate those moments as much as possible. But then there's some others that are just a little bit more special, and so where I think musicians are kind of chasing those moments for the most part. Like, you know, we're all trying to, we enjoy the music, we love that we're up there playing with, but there's some times where it's just otherworldly. And it feels
well,
like,
that's that high, right? Yeah. Like that's what you're chasing.
The song's just working, everyone's like hitting it just right. The audience, like there's just moments that happen. And so those are my favorite. And then, you know, when I eventually get a chance to be on the road more, like I love to travel. I love to eat. I love going to different cities and trying stuff. So eventually, the whole thing will just be, I think, will really work for my lifestyle, my personality, and the things that I love to do. So
no, that's great. Well, is the music industry obviously has changed a lot over the last couple of decades or whatever. There's some huge advantages now that there didn't used to be, just for distribution and things like that. But there's some big disadvantage where you don't have, those labels as powerful as they were. In some ways, that's an advantage and a disadvantage. But are you concerned at all about the ability to make the career in music now, or is it easier now than it used to be? What are the differences, with Spotify and Pandora and those different things?
Yeah, it's a great time to be an independent musician. You've never had more availability, but then there's also never been as much competition. Basically the label now is Spotify. Spotify is what is changing the game, and the reason is because they now have all the answers with all their analytics. They map everything. So if you can get into that game as an independent artist, it doesn't matter, you can find your audience. You can find the people that are resonating with you if you start to pay attention to the analytics that they give you. And the biggest thing to do to have that happen is to get on the playlists. Whether it's curated by Spotify, some of the playlists are owned by actual labels and they'll just, chock it full of their own artists, like radio basically. Or they have these, crazy fans who have created these playlists that have tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands and even millions of followers. So that's the next kind of game to be had. They are the label, they are the gatekeeper, but it's not as small a gate now. It's much wider.
Yeah, no, I think that's coming from my position. I like that idea. If I do good, if I'm the best, I will be able to rise up. Now, nothing holds me back other than myself at this point, right?
Yep.
Because before, you could be super talented 25 years ago and just never got discovered.
Yeah.
But now, if you're good, if your music resonates, you're going to blow up.
Yeah, you have direct access to fans.
Yeah. No,
So YouTube kind of changed that game. And now the streaming platform Spotify has changed that side of it. And so if you use those to your advantage, and you have the talent, and you're working hard, and you understand the price to be paid, I think there's room for whoever.
Well, where's the best place? I want the audience to hear this. Where's the best place for people to pick up and download your music and buy it?
Well, it's going to be in iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, anywhere that they like to consume music, it'll be there.
Okay.
If I had my choice, I'd have to go to Spotify because, again, those numbers tend to be the ones looked at more now. And the playlists are determined on who's getting saves on Spotify and who's listening to the song for longer than 30 seconds. And so yeah, if they use Spotify and they are cool, that's where I would direct them.
Okay,
because that's what helps me the most.
And then if you're okay with that, I'd love to attach a couple little snippets of some of your songs at the end of the interview.
Cool.
I think everybody should listen to your music. I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
Dude, well, this has been fun. I can't wait to see how this blows up. And again, we'll attach a bunch of links to your music.
Okay.
We'll put your voice audition and both when you were on the show links as well on the show notes. And look forward to watching where this thing goes, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Dude, such a pleasure.